Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 359 and 360 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. Wei Suifeng. It's a very normal name. He keeps yelling it out like this. What could the meaning behind it be? Human Emperor Qi Kang didn't dare to make any movements, watching as the gods from the celestial heavens sent the cage and the man within it into the surging river. The ship that was enshrouded in a dark aura and chains beneath the surface of the surging river suddenly burst out of the water, causing great waves to surge up into the sky. Within the black-colored fog, flickering human figures could be seen indistinctly on board the ship. Human Emperor Qi Kang had seen this ghost ship by the riverbanks of the surging river. Back then, Qin Mu had stopped the others from boarding the ship, and had killed a prince of the celestial heavens by the riverbank. Wei Suifeng, you have a deep connection to this ghost ship. Back then, you were the owner of this very ship, the commander of the feathered forest guards. Then you ran away, and disappeared for hundreds of thousands of years. Yet the feathered forest guards under you are still on the boat, and have become a part of the ghost ship. In the sky, the existence on the Emperor's throne realm within the celestial heavens ship laughed. Look at how much your old subordinates miss you, they have all emerged. You infiltrated the Heaven Alliance, thinking that you had concealed yourself well enough, and then ruined the great plans of the celestial heavens countless times. Your sins are deserving of 1,000 deaths. However, you're still of use. The cage sunk into the surging river, and the ghost ship fully emerged out of the surface of the river. There was actually a strange force that was replacing the substance within the celestial river. At this very moment, the man in the cage suddenly acted up. There were a series of loud explosion sounds, and the massive chains that held him down suddenly snapped from the middle. The chains locked onto the ghost ship, and with a forceful swing, the cage burst out from the surface of the river and landed on the deck of the ghost ship. Whoosh! The chains flew up and actually merged with the chains that surrounded the ghost ship. It was as though these chains and the chains around the ghost ship were originally the same things. Bastard! An imposing figure descended from one of the ships in the sky. From the ship, countless chains flew down together and were directed towards the ghost ship. The countless gods of the celestial heavens also activated the ships one by one as the chains intertwined around the ghost ship, intending to drag the ghost ship out. Green deity of the eastern sky, do you dare to board the ship? The weirdo in the cage stood up, and with a loud boom, he burst the cage open, splitting it into several pieces. His towering body was emitting a thick black aura, and his whole being was transforming into fog and fusing with the ghost ship. Very soon, he became the black fog that enshrouded the ghost ship. The ships in the sky weren't able to move this ghost ship. On the contrary, they were being pulled downwards by it. From the black fog, Wei Suifeng's voice could be heard, and he laughed and said, "If you board the ship, you will become like me and become one with the ghost ship. You don't realize it at all, but the ghost ship is a cycle to me. You sending me here is merely the starting point of this cycle." The ghost ship sunk into the river. Green deity of the eastern sky leaped in and chased after the ghost ship, but the chains on the ghost ship intertwined and attacked him ceaselessly. At the same time, the ships of the celestial heavens were also dragged down until they plummeted to the river's surface. The soldiers of the celestial heavens quickly undid the chains so as not to be dragged into the black fog. Two existences on the Emperor's throne realm, one beneath the surface, the other on the surface, exchanged blows, and instantly, it caused great chaos. The surging river trembled from the force until it burst out into the sky, revealing the dragon palaces and dragon halls clearly. Human Emperor Qi Kang hurriedly carried down Master Lin Xian, and escaped during the chaos, running off in the direction of the Heavenly Saint Academy. He then heard the yelling of the madman from within the surging river. "My name is Wei Suifeng, follow the map and save me." Is he directing that at me? Human Emperor Qi was perplexed. In the chaos, several gods discovered him and immediately chased after him. Human Emperor Qi sneered. Do you think that me reliving this life was for naught? This old man has learned from the divine legs before. His legs moved as fast as the wind, and he sprinted off while the skies were turning dark. Along the way, he left behind a series of thunder rumbling sounds. That fellow who calls himself cripple, although his divine legs are great, he likes to be showy. He likes to leave a series of thunder behind when he runs. Human Emperor Qi felt helpless about it. He had learned the heaven-pilfering sun-switching technique from cripple, and the heaven-pilfering divine legs within it had only one flaw, which was that there would be the sound of thunder rumbling when he ran. Back in the day, cripple had stolen from all over the world, and no one was able to catch him. Thus, it molded his showy personality. When the unlucky victim chased after him, cripple would leave behind a series of shocking thunder sounds and disappear into the distance. The one chasing behind him would then only be able to see the trail of white smoke that he had left behind. However, at present, several gods were chasing after Human Emperor Qi. If he left trails of thunder behind, he would clearly just be pointing out his location for these gods. Human Emperor Qi sprinted frantically for almost 2 weeks. At that point, he was long burnt out, and his vital qi was exhausted. He couldn't run any further. Being able to escape from the pursuit of those gods up until now was already an incredible achievement on its own. Heavenly Saint Academy is just nearby. He was no longer able to push through, and he fell from the sky. Up ahead was the Heavenly Saint Academy. It was just that it was surrounded by white fog. Human Emperor Qi landed in the fog, and with all his strength, he walked towards the Heavenly Saint Academy. He saw that there were immobile figures standing within the fog. He walked to the front of one of the figures and couldn't help but shudder. That person's head was missing, and in its place grew a tender and lovely flower. From his attire, he should be one of the god generals of the celestial heavens. Up ahead, there was another person with green vines growing all over his body. The green vines intertwined about his bones, and he had no flesh or blood. There were also 2 leaves that tunneled out from the eye sockets of the skeleton. There was another god with a huge mushroom growing out of his neck. Upon noticing Human Emperor Qi arrival, the mushroom actually pulled out its roots from the neck of the god and flew by him slowly as it waved its root about. The flying mushroom made puffing noises and puffed out white fog, which contained incredibly minuscule spores. There's poison in the fog. Human Emperor Qi immediately felt his whole body grow numb and turn stiff. He felt like there were numerous things tunneling out of his throat. Jade Face Poison King, he managed to cry out, but his voice was very weak. Behind him, the several gods of the celestial heavens, who were chasing after him, walked over and sneered. Run, why aren't you running anymore? Human Emperor Qi body was completely stiff, and he couldn't move a single inch. On his back, a lush green sapling emerged out of the nostrils of Tao Master Lin Xian with a puff. We're finished. Human Emperor Qi felt that there was something climbing up his thigh bone, most likely the root of a poisonous object growing inside his body. Within the fog, the footsteps of the gods also gradually slowed down. Suddenly, one of the gods coughed violently, and he spat out countless mushrooms. The mushrooms flew past him slowly and soundlessly. There's poison in the fog, he cried out in rage. Suddenly, his 2 eyeballs dropped out of his eye sockets, and replacing them were 2 huge mushrooms that laid comfortably within his eye sockets. Yet, that god didn't seem to sense it. The flesh and blood of his legs were being replaced by vines, and still, he didn't sense anything. Roots were growing in his feet, and his whole body seemed to have transformed into numerous strange plants that rooted themselves into fertile land. His companions shared a similar fate. Their bodies were stiff, and their primordial spirits and divine treasures were also verdant and lush with all sorts of poisonous things growing all over them. From the fog, a man who was of a very tall build walked over, and he laughed towards the people behind him. Granny, fusing the technique of creation and the Tao of healing is truly very promising. Although that mischievous brat, Mua, is highly skilled in the technique of creation, in the area of medical expertise, he is still far inferior compared to me. Yes, yes. Behind him was a woman who replied impatiently. Just now, someone called out for you from within the fog. If you don't go over soon, he will be poisoned to death by you. He won't die. When I heard him calling out just now, I ordered the poison within his body to stop growing. It's Qi Kang and Daoist Lin. Human Emperor Qi Kang was completely relieved, and he passed out. When he regained consciousness, he saw that he was lying on the body of a huge spider that was running forwards noisily. Tao Master Lin Xian was already completely healed and was sitting beside him. He got up and looked around his surroundings, seeing his own disciple floating in mid-air with a sword on his back. Little brat Su, this is. Human Emperor Qi Kang saw that there were other people around, Jade Face Poison King, the God Eyes Spear God who called himself blind, the Thief God who escaped extremely fast, the Art Saint Heavenly Painting Crown Prince, the Old Blacksmith, the most beautiful Granny Sai, and others. We are going to save people. Village Chief looked back at him. Teacher, if you arrived a little later, we would have left the Heavenly Saint Academy. The cities around the academy have already been cleared by us. Human Emperor Qi Kang looked about and asked in puzzlement, where are the people that you have saved? Suddenly the giant spider stopped. They had reached. Within the town were some old people who didn't manage to escape in time. Mute had a loud voice, and he yelled for everyone in the town to come out and stand together. Deaf leaped down from the back of the spider and unraveled a scroll painting. He flipped it in their direction, and all of the people of this town were taken into the painting. Human Emperor Qi Kang looked at the painting. The people from the town were walking about the painting, and there were other people there as well, amounting to tens of thousands of them. Qi Kang was dumbstruck, and he noticed that within Mute's chest were hundreds of such scrolls. It's good that teacher is awake. Village Chief continued, along our journey, anyone can die but Deaf. No matter what, we have to escort Deaf alive to Eternal Peace's capital city. Human Emperor Qi Kang nodded silently. Suddenly, he asked in a hoarse voice, what happens after we reach the capital city? Village Chief was silent for a moment before he replied with a choked voice, I don't know either. I don't know either. For great heavenly teachers, for great heavenly kings, where are they? Human Emperor Qi Kang asked again. Everyone remained silent. Village Chief choked out, I don't know. They are the forces of founding Emperor, we are Eternal Peace. Granny Sai smiled warmly. It's only rational that they don't help Eternal Peace. If we asked them to help, we would just be bringing harm to them. Everyone nodded their heads and didn't speak up again. By the way, do any of you know Wei Suifeng? Human Emperor Qi Kang suddenly thought of the weirdo in the cage and asked. Granny Sai was astonished. Wei Suifeng is the Heavenly Saint cult's founding master, the big disciple of Saint Woodcutter. Why does Human Emperor Qi know of his name? Mua has been looking for him for a long time. He said that he left some geographical maps behind that hid many secrets. Human Emperor Qi Kang looked blankly before he cried out, Heavenly Saint cult's founding master. No wonder he was of such devil nature. I saw him, he was drowned in the river by the celestial heaven's green deity of the eastern sky and then fused with the ghost ship. He also said something about following the map to save him. I think. He hesitated for a while before continuing. I think that he may be the most powerful person, after the annihilation of the founding emperor era, and from the Eternal Peace era until now. Granny Sai shook her head. This founding master is one who washed his hands of all responsibility and vanished after founding the heavenly saint cult. He can't be too powerful. If he can even cultivate to become a god at present, it would probably be due to a miracle. Human Emperor Qi Kang was taken aback, and he scratched his head. He may have already cultivated to the Emperor's throne realm. He may be the one and only existence on the Emperor's throne realm in eternal peace. Everyone was astonished. Village chief clarified, "You said that he was drowned in the river by the celestial heaven's green deity of the eastern sky, and that he fused with the ghost ship." Human Emperor Qi Kang nodded his head. Village chief spoke resolutely, "Then he can't be saved." Everyone was puzzled. Village chief explained, "Mua spoke of the ghost ship to me before. He said that he relied on the divine arts of the four deities of the ancient gods and the power of the most formidable ancient army of gods and devils to solve the divine art of the ghost ship and walk out alive. Wei Suifeng has fused together with the ghost ship. Where can he find the four deities of the ancient gods? Don't bother thinking about saving him, he is definitely dead without question." Granny Sai furrowed her brows. Butcher smiled. "We should still tell this to Mua, whether or not he wants to save him is up to him." Granny Sai let out a sigh of relief, and then she asked again with worry, "Does anyone know where Mua ran off to?" Human Emperor Qi Kang hurriedly replied, "He is still in the great ruins, and should be near Border Dragon City. When we were passing by there was an army of the celestial heavens that said they were following orders to go and kill the son of Yudu." Village chief pondered over it and said resolutely, "Cripple, go and inform Mua. You have the greatest speed and the least courage. When a fight breaks out, you just run off, so there's nothing much you can do here." The honest cripple snorted, a little unhappy. Blind added with concern, "Cripple, be careful on your way there, don't die. I haven't stolen from the celestial heavens yet, so how can I die?" Cripple laughed out loud and instantly vanished, and a series of thunder rumbling could be heard from afar. Clearly, he was already several hundred miles away. "This rascal, he runs pretty d*mn fast," everyone exclaimed in admiration. Cripple sprinted all the way, and after a few days and nights, he reached the surroundings of Border Dragon City. Looking around, he didn't find any traces of Qin Mu. Instead, he saw that suddenly, the sky was filled with radiant stars, and all of a sudden, within a split second, a resplendent galaxy emerged. Cripple was startled. The stars in the sky multiplied and grew larger, and the sounds of war drums could be heard indistinctly. Very soon, the bright stars could be identified clearly with the naked eye. They were ancient gods, completely different from mortals. They were like the ancient gods that had walked out of myths and legends, and the halos at the back of their heads resembled stars. Lay the inescapable net and capture the son of Yudu. A voice that sounded like thunder and lightning came from the skies. Cripple's heart flickered, and he moved along the direction of the galaxy flow. From afar, he could see the boundless darkness that resembled an enormous black pot covering the primordial realm upside down, enshrouding it for God knows how many tens of thousands of miles. In the darkness, innumerous celestial troops and generals drove battleships and rushed forwards. The rays of light from the various divine arts tore through the darkness. Within the torn darkness, a god with 3 heads and 6 limbs was slaughtering mercilessly. He had drawn the attention of almost a third of the army of the celestial heavens that had come to the lower bound. Cripple retracted his head. "That's Mua. The Mua that used to fight with me over sugar-coated haws when he was a child." Crippled hesitated slightly, not moving forward. Rather, he looked from afar. It was too dangerous over there. He saw many gods and devils of the celestial heavens charging into the darkness and collapsing, their primordial spirits destroyed. Some of these gods and devils were much stronger than him, but were unable to defend against the invasion of the darkness. This power of darkness is much stronger than the darkness of the great ruins. Cripple was worried. He thought to himself, will Wei Suifeng survive an hour and a half? In the sky, galaxies drifted. However, these weren't stars, but the great heavenly cycle constellation army of the celestial heavens. They formed a giant heavenly net, suppressing the darkness. It looked like a great overarching dome had been placed over a black pot. The sky and ground were completely lit, as though by millions of bright shining stars. Their brightness radiated in all directions, eliminating all shadows. The heavenly net began contracting, compressing the pitch-black devil chi of Yudu. Very soon, the little Yudu within the primordial realm was compressed by half. Mua is being restrained. Cripple was startled. Countless mountain gods rushed over, and Cripple quickly merged into their midst and followed them towards the darkness. He was proficient in the art of creation and transformation, and swiftly disguised himself as a mountain god. The huge and majestic mountain gods had circled the heavenly net completely. Each mountain god took out a pillar and abruptly stabbed it into the ground. They then stood beside the pillars, performing spells and chanting phrases. The pillars began to grow bigger and taller at a frightening pace, spinning as runes glowed on their surfaces. The runes then flowed along the pillars into the ground, which was quickly solidifying. The mountain god beside Cripple noticed him and shouted, "Where's your treasure? Why didn't you take it out?" Before Cripple could answer, a terrifying radiance suddenly glowed within the darkness. Upon seeing the light, Cripple quickly fell to the ground, shrinking his body. Before the mountain god realized what was going on, a gigantic beam of light hummed and swept past him, slicing him into two. His thick pillar was also sliced and fell to the ground. The light swept across the surroundings, shaking the air and emitting a deep humming sound. It wasn't a single beam of light, but 6. The 6 beams of light swept, sliced, and cut in all directions, and across the inescapable net. The heavenly net of the great heavenly cycle constellation army had been completed. The back of every celestial god's head glowed brightly like stars, overpowering the 6 beams of light. However, the earth net wasn't yet done. Suddenly, the pillars were destroyed one by one, with some even being broken into 6 or 7 pieces. As for the mountain gods, they were dodging the beams of light emitted from the darkness. Since they were powerful and the beams were bright, they dodged them expectedly. Cripple remained prone and looked towards the mountain gods. They were indeed powerful and had reacted quickly. Apart from the one who got distracting talking to him, the rest of the mountain gods successfully dodged the terrifying 6 beams of light. Interestingly, when the mountain gods jumped to avoid the light beams, the height of their jumps was pretty similar. Idiots! Cripple broke into a cold sweat and didn't dare to move. He thought to himself, Mua has 3 eyes. 2 are able to shoot divine rays of bright light, while the center eye shoots dark light. Now, he's in his 3-headed, 6-armed form. 6 beams of bright light, and 3 beams of dark light. He's forcing you to jump to the same height, so that he can kill you with his 3 beams of dark light. When he was in Supreme Emperor Heaven, he saw Qin Mu break the seal and transform into Son of Yudu. It was a frightening scene. If not for Earth Count's interference, things could have been disastrous. Cripple was extremely fearful of Qin Mu's demonic third eye. He saw a mountain god leaping through the air, and suddenly, his body was sliced neatly into 4 equal parts by 3 invisible knives. Cripple looked around and saw that the rest of the mountain gods had been sliced neatly into 4 equal parts as well. Mua isn't being controlled by the devil nature. Rather, he is controlling it. It has to be. Son of Yudu doesn't fight this way. Cripple thought, Son of Yudu fights on instinct, whereas he fights with reason. In the sky, the heavenly net suddenly contorted, as if it was pulled by some fearsome beast. The great heavenly cycle constellation army which was inside the heavenly net, was trapped and ended up being dragged with it. They screamed in despair. The great heavenly cycle constellation, army, was under the charge of the heavenly cycle star god of the celestial heavens. The star god was an ancient god, but the great heavenly cycle constellation, army, recruited half-gods and other races who managed to cultivate successfully. The great heavenly cycle constellation, army, fell into the darkness with the heavenly net and was greeted by a huge cauldron. The entire heavenly net and the army of gods and devils dropped into the cauldron and went silent. After swallowing so many gods and devils, the huge cauldron suddenly spewed upwards. Many faces floated in the darkness, all saying, "Ah Cho." Just when Cripple began to relax, the dark sky brightened again. In the sky, countless gods were moving pieces of precious treasures, arranging them to form the face of Heaven Duke with his white eyes and white eyebrows. The form was comprised of countless treasures that were reorganized into Heaven Duke's head using his runes of Great Tao, which were formulated by the celestial heavens' usage of algebra models. Heaven Duke's eyes shined downwards, burning away the devil chi of Yudu with immeasurable brightness, and easily revealing Qin Mu. Cripple saw that one of Qin Mu's 3 heads was a big-headed baby. It was being burned by Heaven Duke's gaze and was in pain, trying to retract back into his body. Cripple thought to himself, the great Tao of Xuanju and Yudu are clashing with each other. Mua is unable to take it anymore. Qin Mu leaped and flew away. The gods in the sky moved together with him, keeping the formation of the head of Heaven Duke intact. However, Qin Mu was too fast for them to catch up. Cripple quickly got up and followed suit, but he was unable to catch up with Qin Mu as well. At this moment, Cripple saw a flash of white light bursting in the western sky where Qin Mu was heading. An aura of Emperor's Ore emerged, blocking his way. A fleet of overlapping celestial palaces materialized, with a great deity, primordial spirit, sitting within the jade capital's numinous sky hall. He suddenly stood up. Almost at the same time, a blanket of darkness appeared over the northern sky with the same aura of Emperor's Ore. A fleet of celestial palaces appeared, like a scroll painting unfurling. Son of Heaven Yin was sitting on the Emperor's throne, the great seas surging behind him. Over at the south, where blazing fire raged, a fleet of celestial palaces appeared among the flames. The numinous sky hall sat within the sacred fire, with 9 phoenixes spreading their wings and shrieking. Cripple was overwhelmed by the Emperor's Ore. He looked back and saw a green light bursting into the sky, followed by a fleet of celestial palaces appearing among the light. Countless palaces had grown a layer of dragon scales, giving off an air of unsophisticated simplicity. The white deity, black deity, red deity, and green deity, the 4 great deities born after the creation of the celestial heavens, had all arrived. Cripple's heart sank, he was getting more and more desperate. Qin Mu rushed towards the white deity in the west, sending out a terrifying shock wave. However, he was forced back by the white deity and was unable to escape via the west. He charged at Son of Heaven Yin and battled him among the great seas. After a few blows, he was forced to retreat. The north route wasn't an option either. Qin Mu turned towards the south. Music played, and red deity Qi Xiaoyu transformed into a 9-headed phoenix and forced him back. Cripple saw Qin Mu rushing madly past him towards the oncoming green deity from the east. Not long after, he saw Qin Mu tumbling back to him. Mua. He reached out his trembling hands, unable to catch Qin Mu, who continued to be beaten back every time he charged forward. Don't hurt the son of Yudu, capture him. From afar, an emotionless voice said, he is an important weapon to deal with Earth Count. Cripple saw Qin Mu continue charging forward, only to get beaten back time after time. His injuries were getting worse, and he had difficulty standing. Mua. Cripple rushed towards Qin Mu. Qin Mu's 6 arms were supporting him off the ground, and he was coughing up blood and fragments of his lungs. Cripple rushed towards his location with all his might. When Qin Mu saw him, he turned around and smiled. "Grandpa Cripple." Cripple saw Qin Mu lift a finger at him, which had runes surrounding it. "No!" Cripple shouted angrily before he was engulfed by the runes and disappeared. He spun and twirled. When his body settled, he was already thousands of miles away. Cripple was shocked and angry, wanting to return to the battlefield. However, it was too far, even for a peerless thief god like him. "Brother, you should go." Qin Mu struggled to get up. He wiped the blood off his mouth, looked around at the 4 approaching deities, and laughed. "You can still return to Yudu. You are very important. We can't let the heavenly courts gain possession of you. If they do, Earth Count will be in danger. Let me send you back." Qin Fengqing shook his head and charged at Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu. "You are more important." Qi Xiaoyu plucked her musical strings, causing him to fall back. He immediately got up and charged at her again. Qin Mu invoked the undying god consciousness, trying to suppress him and force him back to Qin Word land. "Go back. Return to Yudu." Qin Fengqing was beaten back once again, and tried to crawl up. All of a sudden, his devil nature erupted, strongly resisting the suppression. "You should go back. Stubborn." Qin Mu used all of his power to suppress him and shouted angrily, "We must not let them gain possession of you. I'm not son of Yudu. I'm just a consciousness born out of this body after you were sealed. I don't have a soul, my soul is yours. Go back." Qin Fengqing was suppressed until he was crawling on the ground like a baby. He groaned as he moved towards Qi Xiaoyu. "You are more important. Bad brother is more important. Mother doesn't like me, she's afraid of me. Mother likes you more. If you live, Mother will be very happy." He tried to stand up again, fighting to regain control of his body. Qin Mu sighed and closed his eyes. He said softly, "Heaven Duke, Earth Count, please lend me your power." A burst of power surged within him, causing Qin Fengqing to be sent back to Qin Word land. "Bad brother!" Qin Fengqing shouted at the top of his lungs as he fell into Qin Word land. Qin Mu held down the slaughter cauldron. Within the cauldron, there were faces floating on the surface, staring at him. Qin Mu raised his hand and plucked out the third eye that was residing between his eyebrows. A gate of heaven influence appeared behind him, and he threw his eye through the gate into Yudu. The faces in the slaughter cauldron looked at him, a teenager without his third eye, and said quietly, "Ah Cho." "Yes, I am Ah Cho." Qin Mu wiped the blood off his forehead and grinned. He staggered to his feet as the 4 deities of the celestial heavens approached. What was Ah Cho? Ah Cho was just a man who had lost everything. For the Ah Cho that was transformed by Earth Count, his parents were killed as part of the celestial heavens plot against him. At that time, Earth Count's power prevented him from seeking revenge. Ah Cho and Earth Count were 2 consciousnesses of the same life. Earth Count was restrained by rules, while Ah Cho wanted to break them. In the end, Ah Cho was beaten back to Yudu by Celestial Emperor. He was suppressed by Earth Count at Yudu's Jade Lock Pass, lonely and miserable. Now, Qin Mu was also Ah Cho. They were similar, both appendages of the original bodies. Ah Cho was Earth Count's reincarnation, while he was Qin Fengqing's second consciousness, born from his baby body after he was sealed. Ah Cho didn't have a soul of his own, and neither did he. Ah Cho was a guardian and an avenger. He fiercely wanted to protect his family, but failed, ultimately falling into the hands of the ancient Celestial Emperor. Qin Mu also wanted to protect eternal peace, and wanted to avenge the people who suffered and died from this calamity. In the end, Ah Cho was suppressed at Jade Lock Pass, subjected to endless hellfire and powerless to do anything. In the end, our Cho became a sinner under the rules of Yudu. He should have been Earth Count, impartial and possessing God nature. Instead, he developed humanity. Qin Fengqing was Little Earth Count. Qin Mu, who was his other consciousness born from his shell, should have had God nature as well. Instead, Qin Mu had Little Earth Count's humanity. Because of their similar predicaments and encounters, he was our Cho, a man who wanted to protect and avenge, but was powerless to retaliate. Qin Mu laughed, his hand clutching Celestial Venerable Ling's peachwood hairpin tightly. He pointed at the space between his eyebrows, which used to house his third eye but had now become a deep, empty socket. Ancient Celestial Emperor, you have been waiting instead of making a move. Are you waiting for me to grow desperate, and ultimately submit to you? Fresh blood was still flowing out of his third eye socket, streaming down on both sides of his nose. Even so, his hands were steady as they inserted the peachwood hairpin into his empty eye socket. He laughed softly. I am left with nothing without eternal peace. Once I activate Celestial Venerable Ling's hairpin, water from the Celestial River will gush out to destroy my body and consciousness. You will have no chance of coming back to life. A powerful consciousness surged from the sky and thundered within his head. The ancient Celestial Emperor's voice was cold and emotionless. You shouldn't have dug out your eye. You are now left with no soul and are useless, with no power to solve Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. Why should I help you when you can't retrieve my corporeal body? His voice became colder. You thought that you could control everything, giving my imperial decree to a black demon boar, negotiating with me, making me your arm and your pawn. However, you were ultimately short a move. Do you remember Wei Suifeng? Qin Mu was stunned. My right commander of the Feathered Forest Guards, Wei Suifeng. He used to command the right regiment of the Feathered Forest Guards on my behalf. He is like you, full of himself. Celestial Emperor's voice was filled with mockery. He is as arrogant as you. He thought he could infiltrate the Heaven Alliance and deceive everybody. He believed he could do something for the lower bound. However, he was unable to fool me because I was the one who appointed him as an official. I saw through him the moment he entered the Heaven Alliance and arrested him immediately. He also comprehended Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art, and I have ordered the green deity of the eastern sky to drown him in the river, in exchange for the ghost ship. He laughed heartily. If I can exchange for the ghost ship, I can trade for the corporeal body locked under the Celestial River by Celestial Venerable Ling. I can then coerce Celestial Empress with her body. Also, I have the help of Tao Ancestor, and I can make things difficult for Earth Count's daughter as a way to threaten Earth Count. Why do I have to rely on you? I made use of you to reconstruct my souls, now my 3 souls are complete. I also used you to severely injure Celestial Venerable Hao, forcing him to return to the celestial heavens and be unable to interfere with the primordial realm. I even utilized Celestial Venerable Hao to get rid of Mother Earth and obtained her corporeal body. With it, the entire primordial realm is mine. Half of this universe is under my control. Celestial Venerable Mu, do you think you are qualified to negotiate with me? He was the biggest winner of the battle for the primordial realm. Be it Qin Mu, the living beings of the primordial realm, the great army of gods and devils of the celestial heavens, the 4 deities of the celestial heavens, or even Mother Earth and Celestial Venerable Hao, they were all his pawns. He planned to make a comeback, and half of this universe would be his. In the past, he failed because he was above board, out in the light. Everyone was plotting against him. Be it half-gods, life forms after the beginning, or the ancient gods, they all wanted him dead. Now that he was in the dark, who could plot against him? He was the winner, the sole and biggest winner of the battle for the primordial realm. Qin Mu said indifferently, the green deity of the eastern sky. He is just behind me. Why doesn't your majesty ask him the outcome of the exchange? The voice of Celestial Emperor disappeared as his consciousness left. He was apparently going to ask the green deity of the eastern sky, who was approaching Qin Mu from the east, how it went. After some time, Qin Mu felt a consciousness returning to his mind. This was Celestial Emperor's consciousness. However, it didn't have the arrogant, incessant chatter of a victor like before. Instead, he fell silent. Qin Mu spoke coldly, Wei Suifeng is my big senior brother. He is the most paranoid person under the heavens, as well as the wiliest. He has been unrestrained for 1,000,000 years, there is no way you can keep him. The 4 deities of the celestial heavens were approaching, they could capture Qin Mu at any moment, or kill him at will. The voice of Celestial Emperor rang out again. However, it wasn't within Qin Mu's mind but from afar. 4 deities, stop. Qi Xiaoyu, son of Heaven Yin, and the rest stopped. They raised their heads and saw a lush primordial tree descending from the sky, stabbing into the heart of the primordial realm. The other celestial Venerable Yu descended together with the primordial tree, looking majestic and dignified as his body radiated 10,000 rays of light. The ball of primordial tree roots gently relaxed, the gigantic roots extending and burrowing deep into the ground. As the roots burrowed beneath the earth, mountain ranges that measured over 10,000 miles rose on the surface. A majestic-looking scene of mountains was created. The life force contained within the primordial tree filled these mountain ranges with lush flora and dense forests, like a beautiful painting. This strange phenomenon demonstrated Mother Earth's power. However, it wasn't Mother Earth who controlled this power, but the ancient Celestial Emperor. That Celestial Venerable Yu walked over and told the 4 deities of the celestial heavens, you are dismissed. He is already not the son of Yudu. Qi Xiaoyu and the rest was stunned. Son of Heaven Yin said, this person is one of the 3 heroes of Eternal Peace's reform, the famous overlord body of eternal peace, and a survivor of the founding emperor era, he cannot be kept alive. Celestial Venerable Yu glanced at him and smiled ambiguously. Yin Chaojin, he has another identity, Celestial Venerable Mu. Son of Heaven Yin's expression changed, his face pale. Celestial Venerable Yu said indifferently, Celestial Venerable Mu's merits are unrivaled, imparting teachings at the Jade Pool and benefiting countless future generations. How many people are qualified to kill him? If you kill him, you will suffer infamy. Step back now, he's already useless. With no soul and only spirit and flesh, he's no longer the overlord body. Son of Heaven Yin was in a daze. He wanted to examine Qin Mu carefully, but he felt guilty and didn't dare to make eye contact with him. He was the black deity of the celestial heavens, an existence at the emperor's throne realm, and he ruled Mingju, and had power over all levels of society. However, when he made eye contact with Qin Mu, he couldn't help but recall what happened 1,000,000 years ago. Qin Mu, however, was calm. The ancient celestial emperor was correct in that he was without a soul, and was left with only spirit embryo and a corporeal body. He was a consciousness born out of Qin Fengqing's body after he was sealed. To put it harshly, even his body didn't belong to him but to Qin Fengqing. All along, he was just an orphan. On that night 32 years ago, when Granny Sai picked him up from the basket that was sailing down the river, his consciousness was born. Qin Mu was the name given to him by village chief. Son of Heaven Yin turned and left, while Qi Xiaoyu stared at Qin Mu for some time before flying off. Celestial Venerable Mu. Overlord Body Qin. Green Deity and White Deity both shook their heads and left apathetically. He's useless. Celestial Venerable Yu held Qin Mu up in his palm, examining him from left to right, and shook his head. You are without a soul, so how can you help me get back my corporeal body? Celestial Venerable Mu, I find it very hard to believe you. Qin Mu put away the peachwood hairpin and sat down on his palm, coldly saying, "Yes, had I not mastered the undying God consciousness, I could have died when I dug out my third eye, my consciousness dispersing. It's understandable that your Majesty is worried. However, your Majesty needs to take a gamble." Celestial Venerable Yu revealed a smile. "I usually don't gamble, but after I met you, I realized I made the right gamble. The threat to the celestial heavens and the Heaven Alliance is very low. The descent of the strongest divine weapons to the lower bound was merely a splitting of benefits by the celestial heavens. Some got Yudu, some got Xuandu, some got the Great Ruins, and some got the 4 great celestial poles. For myself, I wrestled back the primordial realm from the hands of Celestial Venerable Hao. In the future, I will gain even more." Qin Mu was breathless and forced a smile. "Your Majesty has the primordial realm. In that case, eternal peace." "I won't destroy eternal peace. I have promised you that." Celestial Venerable Yu smiled faintly. "My words still hold true, and I won't renege. The power of the primordial realm is too diverse and complicated, making it very difficult to govern. I will give your people a tiny place. Letting them live is also the heavens' virtue of loving all living beings. Moreover, I am the heavens." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. However, the reform needs to stop, and the leader of the 3 heroes of the eternal peace reform needs to be killed and paraded on the God execution stage. Otherwise, where is the prestige of the celestial heavens? Celestial Venerable Yu looked at his face and smiled. "You can live, the people of eternal peace can live. The new sky map will encompass the entire primordial realm. This is the future I plan to give to the people of eternal peace and the primordial realm." Qin Mu's heart was sinking. An extremely hopeless future encompassed by the sky map. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would become the sacrificial offerings to end Eternal Peace's reform. There are still powers within the primordial realm that need to be suppressed and subjugated, like Mahakala, Crimson Light Son of God, and Fengdu. Celestial Venerable Yu placed him down and laughed. "Your friend is here for you, go with him." Qin Mu saw Cripple running towards him, as swift as wind and lightning, fear and panic clearly written all over his wrinkled face. He looked as though he had made up his mind and summoned enough courage to charge towards Qin Mu and Celestial Venerable Yu. Cripple was the most timid in the disabled elderly village. However, to save Qin Mu, he was willing to sacrifice his life. Celestial Venerable Yu laughed and flew off. "Grandpa Cripple." Qin Mu smiled as he looked at the oncoming old man. "I'm fine, I'm just tired. Don't say anything." Cripple carried him on his back and ran with all his might towards the east. He felt warm blood flowing down his back onto his chest, and Qin Mu's breath becoming weaker. "Grandpa Cripple, I remember when I was small, every time Granny gave me to the people outside the village, you would steal me back." Blood wouldn't stop coming out of Qin Mu's mouth, and his voice was getting softer. "I originally didn't want to recall the incidents from when I was young. At that time, I was just a weak consciousness of this body. I suddenly thought of it now. I am just a consciousness born out of this body. As I slowly grew up, I was able to remember many things." "Don't say anything." Cripple's eyes widened, and he ran as fast as he could. "Mua, don't say anything. I will bring you to see Apothecary." "Apothecary, F***CK, why are you still not here?" "My speed is too slow." He ran with all his might, and was exhausted to the point that he felt like vomiting blood. Qin Mu, who was on his back, was quiet, causing Cripple to worry again. "Mua, talk to me. Don't sleep. Mua." Qin Mu opened his eyes and looked forward groggily. The dragon sparrow flew and danced in the sky. Yang Qiling was with the dragon Qilin, standing on the dragon sparrow's back. Cripple placed Qin Mu on Yang's back, urging the dragon sparrow to fly faster. Since Yang Qiling was ancient celestial emperor's disciple, they didn't face any problems when they encountered checks or patrols. Yang carried them and flew towards eternal peace as quickly as she could. The dragon Qiling carefully examined Qin Mu's wounds and shook his head. Cult Master's wounds are nothing serious. His Overlord Body 3 elixir technique is very strong and contains powers of creation, so his flesh wounds are capable of being healed. Cripple Old Master, you don't have to worry. Cripple said coldly, do you understand the art of healing? The dragon Qiling quickly shook his head and replied carefully, I don't understand. However, when Cult Master battled Celestial Venerable Yu of the Celestial Heavens in the Palace of Mahakala, he suffered severe injuries and injured the origin of his spirit. After sleeping in the Moon Palace for a night, he basically recovered. High Emperor Sword God knew of this. If Cripple Old Master doesn't believe me, you can ask High Emperor Sword God. Cripple half believed and half doubted his words. However, he saw that Qin Mu had stopped vomiting blood and was sleeping soundly, his weak breath slowly stabilizing. He noticed that beneath Qin Mu's eyelids, his eyeballs were moving, which meant he should be dreaming. The dragon Qiling said, when Cult Master was speaking with High Emperor Sword God, I was behind pretending to sleep. Hence, I know of certain matters. High Emperor Sword God said that Saint Woodcutter checked on him when he was sleeping after he was injured. He discovered that when Cult Master was dreaming, there was Dharma circulating. Cult Master later said this could be Brahma Buddha's Boundless Calamity Sutra. Cripple carefully examined Qin Mu and said angrily, where is the Dharma? Why am I unable to see it? The dragon Qiling awkwardly said, Brahma Buddha's Emperor's Throne True Scripture is very powerful. Maybe Cripple Old Master isn't as skilled as Saint Woodcutter, which is why you are unable to see it. Cripple was incensed. He suddenly coughed and spat out blood. The dragon Qiling quickly said, Cripple Old Master, you ran too fast and for a few days without rest, leaving your soul and lungs damaged. I'm unable to heal souls, but for physical injuries, you should take dragon saliva, which I have plenty of. I won't drink your saliva. My creation technique is very strong, so I don't need your saliva to recover. Cripple cursed under his breath, his eyes falling on the soundly sleeping Qin Mu. The heart of his brows had an eye-shaped wound, which was expectedly just a shriveled eyelid since it was missing an eye. Cripple was heartbroken, wanting to heal his forehead, but being unable to do so. At that moment, flesh started growing in the heart of his brows, slowly filling up the eye socket. His eyelid and the area around his eyes also healed and melded together. The wound on his forehead now looked like a small lump bitten by a mosquito. Cripple touched the small lump, which felt hard inside, making him unsure whether it was flesh or an eyeball. Yang Qiling also carefully examined Qin Mu's wounds, her face carrying a puzzled look. There was indeed Dharma circulating within his body. Cripple snorted angrily. You can see that too. Yang Qiling said, I have studied Dharma. It was the only Tao after the beginning that wasn't deconstructed by Tao ancestors' algebra, so I studied it for a while, trying to comprehend the marvel within. Cripple's expression softened. He usually smiled when interacting with people, but because of Qin Mu's injuries, his smile was now gone, and he wasn't giving anyone pleasant looks. However, the strange thing is, Yang Qiling continued to inspect Qin Mu's wounds carefully, her expression growing more and more puzzled. He doesn't have a soul. His primordial spirit was dispersed, leaving only a spirit embryo. The strange thing is that he should have died. I don't understand why he's still alive. Cripple looked at Qin Mu and was relieved when he saw his breath stabilizing. There was tenderness, as well as a slight twinkle at the corner of his eyes. Being able to survive is good enough. Since his recovering, it seems that Dharma is effective. In that case, we don't have to go to eternal peace to look for apothecary. He's unable to help much since he doesn't understand Dharma. Let's go to the Great Thunderclap Monastery instead. Old Ma is sure to understand. They turned towards Mount Meru. The primordial realm was unsealed, and Mount Meru had surfaced. 20 heavens of Buddha realm had been constructed along the mountain, spiraling upwards layer by layer, and making this divine mountain even more majestic. The portion of Mount Meru in the primordial realm was the Great Thunderclap Monastery, with the rest of the 20 heavens outside of the primordial realm. As this was the territory of Brahma Buddha, no one dared to trespass. Therefore, millions of people of eternal peace were hiding there, waiting for the calamity to pass. This is the Boundless Calamity Sutra. Cult Master Qin's life isn't in danger. Within the Great Thunderclap Monastery, Rulai Ma called over Devil Ape Zhong Kong and Monk Mingxin to check on the sleeping Qin Mu. Only the two of them had learned Brahma Buddha's Emperor's Throne true scripture. Monk Mingxin said, "Cult Master Qin has a spirit embryo but no soul. I don't have much knowledge of this phenomenon. Senior brother Zhong Kong, you have deep knowledge of the Dharma, what do you think of his condition?" The Devil Ape said, "Kindness." Rulai Ma frowned and said, "Disciple, how do I interpret the word kindness?" Monk Mingxin said, "Teacher, big senior brother is saying that doing good turns calamities into blessings. There is no danger to his life." Rulai Ma was still uneasy. Brahma Buddha resides within the Brahma heaven. I will send Mua up to meet him. His abilities are remarkable, and he will definitely have a solution. Cripple nodded his head and was about to agree. However, he saw the Devil Ape lean over and softly whisper a word into Qin Mu's ear. Suddenly, Qin Mu started to wake up, opening his eyes. The Devil Ape clasped his palms together and smiled. Kindness. Monk Mingxin sighed. Big senior brother has such great wisdom. Qin Mu still didn't look good, as he struggled to get up and pay his respects to Rulai Ma. I was awake during my dreams and heard old Ma's words. I am aware of my injuries, and there's no need to meet old Buddha. Old Buddha has already imparted me his techniques, so there's no difference whether we meet him or not. I'm returning back to eternal peace. He then turned and paid his respects to the Devil Ape and Mingxin, who returned the courtesy. Mua, you're really going back to eternal peace. Rulai Ma suddenly took off his cassock and removed his prayer beads. I promised my teacher to impart his teachings so that the Great Thunderclap Monastery would survive. Today, Zhong Kong and Mingxin have already greatly surpassed me in terms of Dharma, so I have performed my duties as a promulgator of knowledge. It's time to return to my original self. From today onwards, I am the original Old Ma, Divine Constable Ma. Mingxin, help your big senior brother put on the cassock and prayer beads. The Devil Ape bowed while Mingxin opened and put the cassock on his body, hanging the prayer beads on his neck. Old Ma laughed. Find one's true self and battle the restless mind. Mingxin, you must help him conquer his restless mind. Zhong Kong, you are now Rulai. Venerables, farewell, our Dharma fate has ended. The Devil Ape got up and clasped his palms together. Farewell, benefactor. Old Ma returned the courtesy and followed Cripple, Qin Mu, and the rest down the mountain. Eternal Peace's capital city. The convoys of people of eternal peace from all over the world were increasing, and there were even refugees from Crimson Light. There were camps full of people around the capital city, which were guarded nervously by around 200 gods of eternal peace. There were too many people, so the food supply was a huge problem. The scholars of every academy were skilled in the art of creation, so they opened up the fertile farmland and used the art of creation to speed up the growth of the crops, which were then harvested and processed into food. However, the soil could only support 3 to 4 crop cycles before the fertility was depleted. Therefore, they had to keep on cultivating new farmland. With the turmoil and chaos of war outside, along with the gods and devils of the celestial heavens appearing and disappearing unpredictably, it was very easy to be killed while cultivating new farmland. A lot of scholars had lost their lives because of this. Be it inside or outside the capital city, there was an atmosphere of panic, despair, and gloom. This day, the sky was filled with battleships of the celestial heavens, with countless awe-inspiring and dignified-looking gods shining brilliantly. Their weapons were gleaming, and their divine might was overbearing, suffocating the people of eternal peace. Although the great army of gods and devils of the celestial heavens had arrived, they didn't attack. Rather, they restrained the gods and devils of the celestial heavens that were scattered all over the land, preventing them from hurting the people of eternal peace. Their discipline was evident. Both inside and outside the capital, there were many people who bowed and offered incense to these mighty gods, praying for peace. When people are suffering, evil nature will flourish. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood at the top of the city and looked at the great army of the celestial heavens. He then looked down at the countless people praying to the great army of the celestial heavens. He smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty, it seems like it's impossible to change this in our lifetime." Emperor Yang Feng stood behind him and sighed painfully, his voice hoarse. From the ancient times through the generations, revolutions and reforms were never bloodless. During the Second Dynasty of Crimson Light, Crimson Emperor died with his corpse destroyed, and no generation of High Emperor has had a good ending. During the destruction of the Founding Emperor era, 33 heavens were wiped out in an instant, and a generation of mighty rulers had to put up with carefree village. The resistance to Eternal Peace's reform was greater, so if there's blood to be spilled. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed. "It would have to start from you and me." Emperor Yang Feng laughed heartily, then suddenly sighed. "I'm worried that after we die, there won't be any successors. After all, there are a lot of foolish people in the world. The gods want the people to be stupid, not daring to resist and revolt, while foolish people will willingly remain stupid, not wanting to resist and revolt. Imperial Preceptor, since the start of our reform until now, there have been people worshipping these gods and devils. The greatest resistance to reform, sometimes, is from these people." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor felt dejected. "To sacrifice your life for these people, is this worth it?" "Worth it?" Emperor Yang Feng raised his voice and said, "To destroy gods in the temple and within their hearts, there are people who hesitate, but there are also people who don't kneel down." His eyes brightened as he smiled. "There are people who kneel down again after standing up, but there are also people who will never kneel down. Even if you and I become the sacrificial offerings for this reform, there will be people who continue the path we took until this world is changed. This is worth it." A majestic god flew up and appeared in the sky above Eternal Peace's capital city. His sheer size distorted the space around him, and the fleet of battleships of the celestial heavens circled him like stars orbiting the sun. This was the green deity of the eastern sky. He was so tall that he reached the clouds, his face sitting among the heavens, and the white clouds becoming ornaments around his waist. He displayed an air of awe-inspiring righteousness, as 10,000 rays of light glowed from him. He had immeasurable strength and power, and could eradicate Eternal Peace's capital city, and its billion people with a finger. A god official flew and landed on the palm of the green deity of the eastern sky, kneeling and kowtowing respectfully, as he called forth an imperial decree scroll. He then kowtowed again, raising the imperial decree above his head before bowing and flying off. "I never had such rules here." Emperor Yang Feng laughed upon witnessing the scene. "The rules of the celestial heavens are just too strict and rigid." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor laughed in reply. "Your Majesty must have forgotten. When Cult Master Qin and I were accused by the contrarians of the imperial court. We were sorry figures caught in a difficult situation, and we almost had to kowtow until our heads bled. Emperor Yanfeng's face darkened, and he said resentfully, I want your head, please remember that. Your Majesty won't have the chance anymore. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled. He saw his wife and daughter in the city and felt pain in his heart, but he turned without changing his expression. Sinners of eternal peace, receive the imperial decree. The god official carried the imperial decree in his hands, his voice booming like thunder, resonating among the clouds. Countless people, including some divine arts practitioners among them, knelt upon hearing the voice. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor felt pain in their hearts, but they felt better after seeing that there were many who refused to kneel. The god official took a glance at the two of them and laughed coldly as he unfurled the imperial decree and read it out loud. By the will of the heavens, the people of eternal peace didn't think of the kindness of the heavens and acted against the heavens. The reform has disrupted the heavenly Tao, resulting in the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people, with the masses destitute and struggling to survive. However, the heavens have the virtue of loving all living beings. His Majesty decreed to only punish the leaders and not the masses. The will of the heavens is as follows. 1. Confiscate all books and records on reform from every college and academy to be burnt in front of the people. Future generations shall not be able to reform. 2. Eternal peace shall restore the ancient system, keeping the position of emperor to govern the country. All sects and cults shall worship the gods, and all the people shall worship and pray to the gods. 3. Eternal peace's authority to issue coins shall be handed over to the celestial heavens. The coins of the celestial heavens shall be circulated among the people. The Eternal Peace Empire shall not compete with the people for profit. 4. Eternal peace shall not forge heavy divine weapons. For those who forge, their families will be executed. 5. Eternal peace shall follow the teachings of the ancestors, and not tamper with the paths, skills, and divine arts. 6. Every year, the Eternal Peace Emperor shall hold a grand festival to thank the heavens for its kindness. 7. The people of eternal peace, whose houses contain artifacts that are able to perform any strange tricks, shall destroy them and not hide them. 8. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor disrupted the order and spread lies, causing chaos and turmoil. They shall be seized and escorted to the god execution stage, where their corporeal bodies and primordial spirits will be executed to serve as a warning to others. End of Imperial Decree. There was a commotion within and outside Eternal Peace's capital city. Countless divine arts practitioners and gods and devils of eternal peace felt a sense of humiliation, anger, and resentment. They couldn't wait to charge forward and attack the heavens. Emperor Yangfeng laughed loudly and bowed. Your criminal accepts the imperial decree. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor passed down an order, no one was to move or take action. A few ships of the celestial heavens flew over, dragging the god execution stage. The blood on the stage gleamed across the sky, the two blood knives moving like blood trails, embroidering incessantly with one another. The god official said, "The two of you, please get on the god execution stage." The inside and outside of Eternal Peace's capital city fell silent, as countless people stared at the god execution stage in the sky. If you want to kill the leader, so be it. Suddenly, the silence was broken by laughter. The people and divine arts practitioners looked furiously towards the sound and saw Qin Mu appearing behind the fleet of ships of the celestial heavens. He stood on the forehead of the dragon Qin, his face pale as though he was seriously ill. The dragon Qin stepped on fire clouds and moved calmly into the midst of the fleet. He then looked sideways at the face of the green deity of the eastern sky, who was towering high above. The god execution stage is scary. Qin Mu looked towards the god execution stage and laughed. You speak as though they are dead with their souls dispersed, as though I am unable to bring them back to life. He didn't look at the green deity of the eastern sky. Instead, he waved at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yang Feng, saying with a weak tone, Imperial Preceptor, Emperor, please go ahead and die. If you manage to die, I lose. Behind him, the green deity of the eastern sky raised his hand, stopping the gods and devils of the celestial heavens, who were drumming up their rage to kill. This is Celestial Venerable Mu, please show him some respect. Part 359 and 360 end here. Thank you for watching.